Hi, welcome to the Instant Ink Comic Book Podcast. So today we're doing something a little different. It's Christmas Eve, so Merry Christmas to those who celebrate. We've already had a bunch of great guests in 2024 on, even though we're a relatively new podcast. And I figured, why not look back, see some of the pages we've put together, and reflect on some of the guests we've had. Before we look back at the episodes we've recorded, I want to share a couple of projects that both Roberto and I have coming up. Starting with Roberto's project, Realm Travelers. So this is an anthology with 6 different stories involved. Roberto just got this pre-launch page up, so there's still a lot of time to start collecting followers. Very important to have a big launch. And if you could check that out, that's Realm Travelers on Kickstarter. Make sure to follow that pre-launch page if you can. And on my end, Naked Kaiju Woman. So this one has been in pre-launch for a couple weeks yet. It's doing pretty well, collecting a lot of followers, but it could always do better. We're so close to triple digits as of the time of this recording. I'd love to see that well over 100 by the time we hit 2025. This is launching on January 8th. I can't wait to share it with you. If you go to the page, you can actually see a preview page with, of course, the black bars covering Naked Kaiju Woman. It's a lot of fun. It's a project that I've been working on for a little while with Raphael, who I worked on with Stay Cool. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's a project that's built for Kickstarter. It's really intended to be successful on this platform. And the pre-launch numbers seem to be showing that as well, that this might be the right home for it. So I think you'll have a lot of fun. And the main thing is, it's not titillation for the sake of it. Like, this is a true story that just happens to have some nudity in it. It's all in good fun. It's not really meant to be too raunchy or too anything. It's just a fun story that happens to have a lot of nudity in it. So yeah, check that out if you can. And without further ado, let's look back at the year of 2024 on the Instant Ink podcast. I'll be using our website. It's at instantinkpodcast.xyz. There, you'll be able to find all the pages we've put together, plus the links to where the podcast is available. It's available on more than YouTube and Spotify, but those are where most of our views are coming from. So we include those links here, but you can find it everywhere. Pocket Casts, Apple Podcasts, any other tool you're using, you can find our podcast there. So definitely check it out. Our very first set of episodes was actually just me and Roberto. It was a test to see how this would all go. This did mean that we got Roberto talking a lot more than usual. Usually he's focused on drawing and I'm the motor mouth talking a lot. In this case, we actually did have a lot of back and forth, so you can get to know us a lot more than you would on other episodes where we have a guest and we're really trying to put the focus on them, though that doesn't stop me from interjecting here and there with my own stories. But realistically, this is the one where if you want to get to know us, episode 1 is where we really do get into each other's philosophies on creating comics and our whole process of how we got into all this business. And you can see here, we put together a really cool page. So it sets the tone for the whole show, as it starts with something relatively serious and becomes something really goofy and silly. And we're still just feeling out how it's all going to work here. And I think it turns out pretty cool. So that's the first 3 episodes, episodes 1 through 3. And as a note, if you do go on YouTube, these are all collected in playlists. So you can make sure that you're watching everything in order by checking out the playlists on YouTube. But of course, podcast.xyz, and you'll find all of the episodes available here as well. Next up, we spoke to Daniel Torres. So he was actually a surprise guest for us. We had someone else scheduled who was unable to make it, and they were kind enough to introduce us to Daniel, and we did it impromptu. He didn't know what he was joining, and we managed to get a great page together, given that nobody was really ready for what we were putting together. Again, a great philosophy for the show that we don't always know what we're going to do. So this ended up being a great way of making that happen. We figured it out and we put a page together. And as you can see here, again, started serious with a bit of an argument as someone's trying to pick up a waitress and ends up going over the falls. We brought a little bit of home here, having it kind of Niagara Falls in our minds, which is where Roberto's from. And I spent a whole whack of time there. So it was a great page, and Daniel was super easy to talk to. He made it really easy to get this podcast started, and a wonderful first guest for us to have. Again, if you haven't checked it out, you can find it on our website, YouTube, Spotify, etc. Definitely worth checking out. Soon after that, we had Aaron on our show. He is someone we knew from projects that he's launched on Kickstarter. He's been around for quite a while. We also know him. We have an Instagram chat with a whole bunch of creators that we all help each other out and boost each other's projects. We found him in there. So it was great to actually have time to sit and talk and get to know him. And yeah, with him, it was honestly the most comic book of all of the episodes we've had. It felt like we were just chatting in an LCS talking about Star Wars and Snyder's DC cut. And it was just, yeah, it was a lot of fun. We covered a lot of ground. And even with all that goofiness that we were talking about, the page that came out may still be the darkest one we have. It was a very somber piece. It's really up Aaron's alley. This, if you've read his work, it's very similar in tone to what he does. So he knows his niche, and he was able to put this together really easily. I think we put together a great page. Again, worth checking out on the page. Check out his episodes if you can. That's 7 through 9. Next up, we had Phoebe Xavier. This was an interesting one, as I got to show a side of myself that I don't always get to show through Phoebe's fandom, which is the hockey fan. Phoebe's a huge Devils fan, and we go off on a tangent talking about hockey, myself being a Red Wings fan myself. And yeah, we got to talk about all kinds of things. I'm always pushing Toronto and all that kind of business, so we did that a little bit. And Phoebe really gets into working with collaborators and how that whole business works. We did have some technical difficulties here. Each of our video drops off at various times, so you can really feel the growing pains here. But the conversation is all captured, and the art is unlike anything we've put together up to this point and since. So we highly recommend checking out the page we've put together. And the podcast is a really good sense of how it all came about. So definitely worth checking this one out. That's episodes 10 through 12. Next up, we had Robbie J Atkinson. We actually talked for so long that I split this into 5 episodes. And it was because the conversation was flowing just so smooth. Phoebe has a lot to say. She's a very deep, thoughtful person. Not to say all the other guests aren't, but she had a lot to say and got us talking a lot, really reflecting on not only the business, but personal fears and creative juices that flow and how that all works. And it was really a deep conversation. If you really want to get to know the 3 of us, it's a wonderful set of conversations to listen to or watch on YouTube. And the story we get together really does develop throughout, but it's probably the most introspective that we've been on the podcast up to and since. It was a great set of episodes. We had a really good time with Phoebe. And yeah, very thoughtful, deep person, and really brought that out of us. So really enjoyed these ones. Definitely worth checking out. Those are episodes 13 through 17. Up next, we talked to Daniel Kalban. So Daniel's been around for quite a while. He's a Kickstarter veteran at this point, and he's had a few successes and had a lot of tips to share on how he came about those successes. We talked a lot about his current projects and what the inspiration behind them. He's got a whole Phantom of the Opera thing we go into that, frankly, I was out of my depth there. So he was really driving the conversation when we were talking about that kind of thing. But yeah, it was interesting to talk about his experience meeting people at cons and how Kickstarter operates and really how he runs his business, given that he's been in the game for quite a while. And we come out with maybe our silliest of the stories thus far. He really had it clear in his mind. So we came up with something really cool. And if you've watched prior episodes, that we were teasing drawing a dragon for a long time, that we were really trying to get Roberto there. This is the episode where it happens. And it really does pay off. That pose is hilarious. So definitely worth checking out the page. Those are episodes 18 through 20. Right after that, we talked to our first local of the bunch, Mark Maia. So Mark is in London, Ontario. So not quite local, but very close. And we got into some very interesting topics here. We started talking about AI and things, always a touchy subject. Though it does get us the hits on the shorts and that. So it doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad thing. We also talked about working with all different kinds of artists. And Mark has been around in the video game space for a very long time and has a lot to share about how all that works and how art direction and just creative endeavors come together. So he has a lot of interesting information to share. Really cool creator. Along with most of the people here, I've supported their books in the past, and Mark is one of them. So a lot of cool stuff. Definitely worth checking it out. And the page we put together, of course, amazing stuff. So episodes 21 through 23, you can check out Mark Maia. After Mark, we talked to Steve. Steve is local in the sense that he's in Toronto along with us, or at least the Toronto area. So we had a lot of that to talk about. We talked about Toronto sports and the long suffering business of that, both being sports fans ourselves. We talked about conventions in the area, but then we also have that comic book talk where Steve brings up the case of why does anybody live in Gotham? And we dig into that. Roberto has a lot to say about that. And it's a great conversation. I always enjoy talking to Steve, both in person, but it was great to get to know him on the podcast. We've run into each other at a whole bunch of local cons, and always had a quick conversation. You're always in a rush to get back to your table, so you only get so much out. But this was a good opportunity to actually get to know him. And yeah, it was a great episode. Please check out the page. We got a funny page together. It somehow became about hot dogs based off the prompt. It's not exactly what the prompt was, but that's how we do it. We stay loose and we don't overthink these things, and it ends up letting some great art come out. So excellent conversation with Steve, and he actually closed out our year of 2024. So that's everyone we've had on thus far. So I won't keep you. I'll let you get back to your holiday fun. I will ask you one more time if you could check out the page for Naked Kaiju Woman. Give it a follow if you haven't. I'd really appreciate it. And Roberto will really appreciate if you follow Realm Travelers, both on Kickstarter, both in pre-launch. They'll both be launching relatively soon, so giving it a follow will make sure that these projects do really well once they launch. Very important, as we're both launching new series that definitely need that boost on day one. And we have a few episodes lined up. You could always find that on our website at instantinkpodcast.xyz. We've recorded about half of the ones that are TBD right now. I'm going to update what the themes were on these. And as they air, you'll see more and more of them available. I'm going to keep the pages hidden until the day that the episodes launch. But you could always go and check out who we're going to talk to. I'll save you some grief. Next week, we'll go through them and I'll share what episodes are coming up. Right now, we have episodes scheduled through May, so we'll be here for a while. We've reduced it to 2 episodes per week, if you haven't noticed already. So we'll be out every Tuesday around noon. So Merry Christmas to those who celebrate. Happy holidays to everyone else. I'll be back on New Year's Eve, so I won't say Happy New Year quite yet. We'll talk before you get out to go party. Let's go through what is coming up on the podcast next year. But for now, have a great one. Thanks very much. See you Tuesday.